Hi everybody, Uncle Max here from the Life to the Max show. I came upon this video by chance and I thought, well, you know what? It's a long video and I do some long videos, so it's worth it to check out their long video and see what they have to offer. I am learning quite a bit from fellow emergency preparedness enthusiasts, everything from survival to bushcraft to medical first aid, CERT, ham radio, all those kinds of things that I've been involved with all my life. And, you know, I get a little rusty and things change in the industries. And I want to stay on top of those things, including an EMT course, which I'm taking at the moment. And so it's important to stay up and learn what's the latest and greatest on those things. And if you step out of something for a while, you come back where you were. It's kind of like if you have a niece or nephew and you visited them when they were little, and then they go away for a little bit and you come back and expect to pick up where you left off where they were little, and all of a sudden they've grown 2 feet and their voices change and you're thinking, crap, what happened? When did you guys grow up? So the same thing happens in the preparedness industry. I remember trying to work with some neighbors in my old neighborhood as the neighborhood CERT team leader and trying to get people better prepared. And this guy says, no, I'm fine. I got a Coleman gas stove. I'm good. I'm prepared. It's like, wait a minute. You got an old Coleman gas stove that uses white gas? Not even the ones that use unleaded, but they use white gas? And that's what, last I checked, was $10 a gallon for one of those little tin cans. It's a gallon. That's not an option for emergency fuel. Plus, it puts out copious amounts of carbon monoxide, extremely toxic and dangerous, blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, yes, people think they're prepared and then they don't deal with it. They're stuck at the level that they were when they left off. And they haven't kept up with the industry, with new information. I'm constantly learning new things. What I thought was true here is not true anymore. In fact, there's a great book out there. It's called The Half-Life of Facts. And it talks about how in every industry, in every scientific endeavor, they have been able to quantify how long it takes for the facts, or at least half of the facts that we thought were legit bona fide facts, are either been superseded or outmoded, like computers. We don't use teletype machine, or we don't use telegraphs anymore. That was a fact. Telegraphs are the way you communicate until they became obsolete. You've got to stay on top of things. And that's one of the reasons why I really like to learn and stay on top of the emergency preparedness, self-reliance, provident living arena. I want people to have the best and latest information. And I learn a lot from others like these guys and from you. And together, we are all better than we are individually by ourselves. We all know much more. Enough of this. I want to get to these guys and why I'm watching their video, because SHTF is coming. A lot of bad attacks on certain people's character just because they believe differently than others. The freedom for some groups to protest and their leaders to say, they're just blowing off steam. People are going to do what they're going to do, but one little protest that happened to be kind of high profile at the wrong time, that did a fraction of the damage that any other protest has done. There's billions, or not billions, but millions. I don't know. I'd like to know how many millions of dollars of damage and businesses ruined and reputations ruined by false accusations have been done from one group toward everyone else, and then everyone else finally is getting fed up at a rally and marching over. And it's been proven that there were instigators that were on the other side riling these people up while they're on a frenzy and they're in that mob mentality and trying to spin them up and get them to do something bad. So they were agitators in there trying to lead good, frustrated people astray. Because of what's been going on, there have been more new gun owners, or 6 or 7 million new gun owners, because they realize, oh crap, if they're doing that kind of stuff, I want to protect myself. I'm not going to let that happen to me. And so people buy firearms to protect themselves. People that are not gun people. And then they finally switch. They had a paradigm shift. They woke up, light bulb went off. Oh, now I know what the other side's been saying all this time. I want to protect myself. They're talking about a number of different things, and they're talking about food. They had somebody, I guess a wife or something's on the side. She's going to ask a question. I'm going to play it at, I better slow it down. I've been listening at 1.5 speed. If you play back my stuff at a little faster speed, their stuff will be really fast. So we'll play it at normal. But here is what they're saying, and I want to be like a third guy right back here. He's commenting. I'm going to comment on what I know that might be different or something to consider different than what I guess Suits or whatever is kind of his nickname or whatever. But what they're saying, and I think I might have a different take on it, so I want to give you a heads up on what that looks like.
Jeff Renshaw asked, "What emergency food supply do you think is good?"
Well, I'm gonna tell you something funny. We went years ago, went to the Mormon Cannery, bought a buttload of 30-year shelf life food, and really cheap because it's just bulk type food.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make sure you have the tools to process it, like a grinder and all that stuff, which we have as well. But
They say they went to the Mormon Cannery. By the way, I think political correctness is they go by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's been their name for 150 something years, as somebody told me. But they do have canneries, and I actually visited one and asked somebody about that. They let anybody go in. You don't have to be a member of their church to do that. They allow anyone who wants to, including this guy, to go in, and you can buy this food in cans with nitrogen packed cans or oxygen absorbing packets, so that this food stores a very, very long time. You got your basic staples, your wheats, your rice, probably dried corn for popcorn. I'm not sure. That'd be good to actually go and find out what they have. We'll have to do another little segment, but they also have water filters that are like this. No, this is a similar one. They have one that's a little bit bigger. They have filter cartridges that are easier to replace, and the filter replacement cartridges are even super cheap. Replacement cartridges are only like $6. And these are the kind you can literally scoop out of a stream, put the lid on with the cartridge in it. You can get them. They're Seychelles, I think is the brand name. They're well respected. A lot of travelers that go all around the world use those. So they're a really great resource for getting prepared. So I kindly encourage you to go check one out. I'll put a link to theirs right here. So that's all on this Mormon Cannery, but you can get a lot of basic staples there. Their BYU, there's their private college. It's huge. It's like 60,000 students. They did studies to find out what the average person should have as far as home storage. It should have so many 100 pounds of wheat, so many 100 pounds of, they say, groats or rolled oats or whatever, so many pounds of sugar, so many pounds, or honey, so many pounds of salt. And like he says, you need to have those implements. Oh, that reminds me, the Far Side cartoon. I got total sidetrack. ADD on, an add-on. That Far Side cartoon, so it shows this man and woman in their shelter, and off in the distance, you see a bunch of nuclear mushroom clouds. And people think that won't happen. Oh, bullcrap. We've come this close so many times, you'd be freaked out. You'd probably run home and build a shelter in your basement right away. To this cartoon, I will find it if I can, and I'll put it up here. And it is the woman nagging her husband. They're in a shelter underground, and they have all this food and all this canned food. And she says, Harold, or I think it was Harold, Harold, how many times did I tell you? How many times? Shelter ain't no good without a can opener. And they have all these canned goods, and there's not a single can opener to open all this food. You've got to have the right stuff.
when COVID hit, I'm just going to give you a kind of a little bit of a tip. When COVID hit, we didn't get into our long-term, I'm pointing that way because it's sitting into our long-term food storage because it's a lot of work, and honestly we didn't want to do that. We weren't desperate. We just didn't, we just noticed the grocery stores were becoming, boom. Now I
noticed their boom. I was there getting a prescription for my wife, and it was so crowded there was not a single cart available in the whole store. And I started looking down the aisles and I thought, oh my gosh, and it caught me off guard. There's a book up here, it's called Don't Get Caught with Your Pantry Down. And it was a resource book for all kinds of emergency preparedness or bulk foods and prepper type of items that would be good just to be better prepared. But the point is, don't be caught without food. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that little pyramid, self-actualization, whatever, that's your highest level. You can't get there if you're starving to death. And it's your primary responsibility to take care of that base layer first. You've got to have your food, you got to have shelter and warmth and things like that. You got to protect your family with those things. And if you don't have them, but you think, well, we're not starving now. But yes, but you don't have that buffer of 1 year, because we could have some challenges that would set us back decades before we ever get back to this level of super comfort and convenience. No soups, no breads, no milk, no eggs. The point is that if you store the kind of food in your food storage that is stuff you're not going to eat, and or you didn't want to get into, you just want to set it aside for 3 years and forget about it, you're going to be in the same boat that I was. I hadn't touched mine, and we're not using ours on a regular basis, and date it, rotate it, which is what I say, date it and rotate it, and constantly using it, then, you know, you're not storing what you eat, you're not eating what you store. Both of those are, you need to be able to do. And so they didn't want to tear into it. And they'll talk a little bit about it in a minute where a guy did that and he got sick. That's one way you can do it. That's one way you can do it. Put it aside. Don't worry about it. But when I went down to my storage room, I found that mice had gotten in there like crazy because I just set it aside in what I thought was a safe, cool, dry, cold storage, and everything's going to be fine. And the mice had got into tons of stuff, and it was a disgusting mess. You need to worry about it. You need to date it and rotate it. Store the kinds of food you're going to eat, and vice versa. And just constantly, let's keep going.
We had a lot of food stored up, but when I did this video actually just recently on canned food, and it has an indefinite shelf life if you keep it temperature controlled and in dark area, if you keep it stored.
I disagree. If you do some store, there's a movie years ago called City of Ember. I liked it. It had Bill Murray in it. It was all about this underground city because they had to go underground because everything was so bad, and they're getting low on the food. And then they find out there was an emergency storage where only the mayor, the head guy, which is Bill Murray's character, and he had this belly like I've got, unfortunately. And it's like, well, why is somebody fat in our struggles? And it turns out they found him in there with a whole bunch of canned goods. And I disagree. I do not believe those cans are going to store forever. We have some old cans, and they were stored in a fairly stable environment and cool, dark place. And some of those are starting to bulge, and they just don't have an indefinite shelf life, in my opinion. So I would not rely on that. Canned foods are something you can store for a few years, but you gotta date it and rotate it. You gotta be using that and then buying fresh stock on the end. That way you constantly got fresh stock replenishing your source rather than buy it, set it out there, and let it go forever. And then it's a problem. And then you're going to go back and you're going to find some cans from 2007 that are bulging, and they're just questionable. And that's the last time you want to take a chance. Here's the deal. You take a chance. If you want to take a chance if it's spoiled and you're going to get food poisoning, now's the time to take a chance on it. When the grid's up and you got treatments for botulism toxin, which may kill you, by the way, and a lot of people do, you got to be careful. If you take a chance on something spoiling, oh, it's an emergency situation, we've got to take a chance on this food, and then you eat it, and then you are down and you are sick. There's nobody there to treat you, and it's going to be a miserable death and a miserable experience for everyone else watching you in utter pain and contortions and slowly dying in front of them. There's nothing they can do. No, don't take a chance on it. Date it and rotate it. Now, canned goods, they're going to be talking about it. That's not a bad thing. I have a shelf, and I've been looking at a number of different shelf options for storing cans. And I have a shelf, and when I talked about it with my cousin, we talked about Grandma's old kitchen or her old storage room where they had lots of food. And some of my female cousins would go down there and pretend to be moms going shopping at the store. They would get different cans. Oh, I want this. This would be great for our dinner. You know, and they just playing house kind of stuff. I ended up getting that because I happened to be there at the right time when Grandma was cleaning that area out, and she let me have it. It was built down there. A can shelf rolls from one side to the other, and I kid you not, it can hold 27 cases of cans. I only know that because I put 27 cases of cans on it. But the thing is that I'm rethinking that, because how important is it to be able to evacuate and not having everything so hunkered down like a bunker in one position, because if a fire's coming or a mob's coming, you know, no man's an island. You can't fight a mob. You're not going to win. It's how important it is to evacuate, because there's been story after story after story of people needing to evacuate. And I'm thinking I don't necessarily want a can shelf of 27 cases. I can't move a can shelf of 27 cases real fast. If I can put just maybe one case worth on the rolling shelf, leave the rest in cases, dated, rotated. And that way, if I need to evacuate, I can evacuate those cases on a hand truck and get some help moving those real fast. And maybe if I can get some people to offload all the cans on the shelf, maybe I can grab those last few, but maybe I'll move a large majority of my food storage very quickly. So cans, that can be a real good. Master Qui-Gon Jinn, the great Jim Phillips, one of my best mentors. I've learned so much from him. And he mentions that in a food storage plan, maybe 1 month supply of canned goods is a good thing, because when excrement strikes the circular rotating air moving device, it's HTF. That means that people's heads they're gonna be running around their heads chopped off. Just give me something to eat. I don't have time. I don't have time to cook it. Pork and beans, that's fine. Pork and beans here. Here's a spoon. Okay, we gotta go. And there's gonna be a ton of things you're gonna be scrambling to do. It's gonna be super stressful that first month until people kind of figure out their long-term preps. How do I really use this hand crank grinder? I think I did it once or twice. I went to a class, but I need to get it out, and I need to figure out how to do this, and let's grind the wheat, and let's get the little box oven so we can bake some stuff. And where's my briquettes? And that first month, you might need to rely on cans. Canned cold green beans, fine. Here, I'll drink the liquid. I need to hydrate, eat the beans, fine. I got something in me. I got to run and take care of this. So consider that in your canned goods. Now we're going to talk about what they're talking about in cans.
Because of the heat processes that go into canning it and the sterilization that's around it. And then they put liners in the can, so you're not getting that metal taste.
That's right.
Canned food to me is the easiest. That and dried beans and rice.
Yep.
And things like that. I mean, salt. You need salt.
Dry beans and rice, yeah, but you're going to need to be able to cook those and soak them. You're going to need to have water. Few people have enough water. A friend of mine was talking to a water manager, and he mentioned that if we have a bad earthquake out here in the West that disrupts some of the towns or cities, that people are going to die. They might barely have enough water just for hydration, not for washing, not for shampooing, not showering, not for washing dishes, just enough to keep their bodies alive. And if it's worse than that, and then it breaks up all the water mains, people are going to die. They're not going to survive. They're not going to have enough water.
With a lot of your canned foods is the level of sodium in them. A lot of your canned foods have a real high sodium content. So that's one thing to be aware of when you're...
I'm going to a chiropractor. I finally decided, I've got to turn my life around. I've been falling apart. I've been letting my food storage go down. I've been letting all of my skills get rusty from military, hazmat, civil defense, CERT, ham radio, all those things that I'm getting really rusty with, and I really need to get back up on top of those things. And we're going to be teaching you those things as I get back and brushed up on a lot of those skills, and teach you a lot of things that I've been learning over 40 years of trying to live a provident life. But I finally decided to go to chiropractor, and he's really good, and he just saved my shoulder. It was so bad I could barely even move this way. I couldn't even put a shirt on without screaming in pain. And now I forgot I have that problem. And because it just in a few visits, he dramatically turned that around. And the same thing with a really bad problem I have with my back. We're making progress on that. It took 5, 6, 7 years to get this bad. And you can't turn that around in one visit. It takes some time to get your body to move back in the right direction. But he's helped me do this. But he also mentioned that he believes that I am low on sodium, and too many people are that the belief that sodium is so horrible is a different story. And he has an article. I'll try to reproduce that article and let you decide, and maybe we can come to a bottom line on that one. Is sodium bad? Is sodium not bad? And he actually has me on some salt tabs to increase my sodium level, because he doesn't believe I have enough. I get cramps and other problems. And anyhow,
when you're looking at canned foods for long-term storage, make sure that you look at the sodium content in it and try and get the ones that are low sodium to try and minimize just getting too much salt in your food.
But on the other hand, if you don't have salt put back, you're going to need that salt in your body.
That's right.
But, especially when you go into restaurants and stuff, we get a lot of salt. So home food is a little bit better for that. But now,
a couple things on salt. One, you need a lot of salt. You need iodized salt, but you also need some non-iodized salt. And what I prefer is ancient sea salt, not Himalayan sea. I mean, the stuff that's really old, like millions and millions and millions of years old. There's a place out here in the West, and they have award-winning salt. And that's the good stuff, because it's not only the sodium chloride in there, but it's also the trace minerals that are in it as well that are good for you. That's the best stuff that I would put in as far as seasoning your food. Salt water. I just saw a segment on there. I'm going to put a link to it. Great video on how to make a desalinator. So if you're near salt water and you have no fresh water to drink, do not drink salt water. You will go crazy. The USS Indianapolis battleship, miscommunication. They delivered the bomb. They delivered the bomb to be dropped on Japan, and then they were heading somewhere, got hit by a torpedo, a misunderstanding, miscommunication on tracking the ship. 700 sailors, many hundreds of sailors ended up in the water, and many of them lasted not that long. A lot of them died of drinking the salt water because they were just so thirsty, and a lot of them died because of sharks, horrendous shark attacks. Oh, it's just scary. Don't drink the salt water. 2, if you want fresh water, how do you purify it? And then if you purify it, can you maybe save some of the salt? I don't know. There is a way of making salt. I don't know that. Gandhi did it, broke the laws, got in trouble. But how do you make salt? Out here in the West, over in Utah, they have this great salt lake, super salty. In fact, I'm going to see if one of our travels across, crisscrossing the West, if I can get a bottle of that water or get a jug of it, and then come home and see if we can distill it and talk about water distillation options for distilling the water so that we can have get fresh water. And it's even a way of purifying other questionable water, brackish water, or really contaminated water. You boil out the, anyhow, we'll talk a lot about that. I'll put a link here to desalinization options. The third thing is there are some kinds of non-iodized salt you need for certain canning purposes. And you can't use iodized salt, so you need to have both. So we'll talk about sources for non-iodized salt, real salt, and iodized salt, and how you can get stuff and stock up on it.
Also, you have, your MREs, we put lifeboat food together for our bug out bags, but
MREs, I gotta warn you, I've saved just about every MRE that I've ever gotten in the Army. And I've got 14 cases downstairs. Most of them are stored in my cold storage of my last house for 11 years. Is that there 11 years? And I've been here 12 and a half, and they've been in my cold storage. They're in a fairly cool, dry, stable environment. However, they do not last in a car. And I wouldn't put them in a kit because they just don't store that well in heat. They'll store for 10 years on 0 degrees, frozen. But you have to handle them carefully. They say be very careful. Those plastic and foil pouches, they can break and brittle and break open, and you're exposing them. The difference in the taste and texture of a lot of these, what they're called Coast Guard rations. The Coast Guard has regulations that you put these rations in the lifeboats so they have something to sustain them. So those lifeboats will sit out there in the hot sun for years, and they swap them out. And they might swap them out and sell them cheap for somebody that wants to close them out. Yeah, they only got 1 year left of their 5-year shelf life, and you can sell them for cheap, whatever. But anyhow, they're designed to store 5 years and be able to handle the heat and the cold of the life rafts. And so those you can put in a jump kit, or not a jump kit, in a fanny pack or some type of a bug out bag in your car, even if your car does get a little hot or a lot hot. You can do that.
The restaurants and stuff get a lot of salt.
Mm-hmm.
So home food is a little bit better for that. But now, also you have, your MREs, we put lifeboat food together for our bug out bags, but not necessarily a full food source. And then you have Mountain House Foods and a lot of survival type foods. There's a lot of stuff out there. What I would highly recommend is before you buy a whole bunch of that food is to take it and test it.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of that food, we've bought buckets of food before just saying, hey, let's just try this out. And you open it up and it's full of salt,
Yep.
full of preservatives, full of whatever. So do your due diligence and check that out if you're going to purchase, that kind of long-term food storage. But honestly, canned food to me,
There's a lot of companies that will make these kits. I got one each kit. It'll be enough food for one person for 3 months or one person for 1 year. You got to understand that a lot of those, they're basing it on like 100 or 1,200 calories. And if you got 5 sons that are 6'3" to 6'8", and I have a daughter who's 5'12" almost. I saw that in an interview with Bob Barker in one of those duty contests. She said, I'm 5'12". And I've got some tall daughters along. I got 6'2" daughter-in-law married to my 6'6" son. And my daughter, my granddaughter, she's on the top 95 or plus. So we're going to have another volleyball player on our hands. So you've got to do some serious homework. Everyone wants, there's a thing called the kit mentality, and Jim Phillips, the great Qui-Gon Jim, will teach us that he has a class called your 72-hour kit could kill you. And that's because people get the kit mentality and they think, well, I got this kit and therefore I'm prepared. So let's throw it in the back or throw it under the stairs. I'm prepared. Whew, I'm good to go. They have no clue what preparedness means, or provident living means. You know, you talk to that about a farmer, and you say, well, you got a 72-hour kit, are you good to go? You just laugh. You just laugh his head off. You know, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they lived off the land. Everyone had gardens. They had courage to have victory gardens during World War II, courage to have chickens, stuff that's starting to come around. People are wanting to learn more about this.
Just an easy way. You go up there and buy what you eat.
Absolutely.
If you don't, you won't eat. So,
well, not just you won't eat, but you know, you can mess up your guts for a while. You know, if you start trying to eat a bunch of different stuff that you haven't ate before, yeah, it's not good for you internally.
right.
So when you're picking your survival food, you want to pick things that you normally eat. You know, you want to have your greens, you want to have your meats, you want to have some beans, but you want to try and pick things that you normally eat.
Right.
The point is, there is a way of actually canning your own meat, and we'll talk about that. I mentioned that a minute ago. There's places you can go to buy canned meats or dehydrated or freeze-dried meats. Those are not necessarily good for rotating. Those would be kind of the pricey way of doing it. But if you can your own meat, that was the best beef I've ever tasted in my life.
So it's not a shock to your system if you have to dip into those kinds of foods and start eating those.
Oh, good point. Good point. That's why you need to be eating at your home storage and acclimating and using it and rotating it. And that way, when the power goes down, it's like, nah, not a hiccup at all. I know how to camp. I know how to use my stoves or my cooking options or my solar cookers or my thermal cookers. I know how to use all those because I use them for camping and other things. We practice using them. And it's not a big deal. I mean, it might be a little bit stressful, but you kind of know how to do it. Versus everyone else is screaming, running around, their head chopped up. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I'm going to die. And we want to vanquish those words. We want to help people. We want to simplify and make it, demystify it for people so that they realize, oh my gosh, thank goodness. It was so scary and nebulous, but I call it the nebulous, mysterious, ethereal, mystical unknown. You know, we got to clear that out, get the fog out, show you the simple ways of doing this. And you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. This is so wonderful. And it's doable. No biggie. Yeah. There are times when people have all of a sudden been eating crappy, pasty stuff, but all of a sudden they're breaking out the whole wheat. They're trying to bake bread and they're trying to eat cracked wheat cereal and stuff like that. And if you haven't acclimated and learned how to use your whole wheat, you're going to have some problems. You're absolutely going to have some problems. Your body's going to take a while to acclimate. Now's the time to get better, get healthy, start getting fit, start losing the weight, start addressing and go to your medical doctor, and also go to your natural health practitioners, your chiropractors, and other practitioners to help solve a lot of the problems.
Well, Southern Prepper a couple of years ago decided he was going to only eat the food that he had at least a year or more supply of.
Mm-hmm.
And he said after about 3 days, he couldn't eat.
Yeah.
He said, I just couldn't eat. So just do some research and test out those foods.
I thought there was more on this, and really there was only a couple more words before they went to another segment, and we're just talking about food and food storage. They found that if you eat pasty white flour, they show the wheat from its whole grain source, what you get when you store wheat. And they show everything they take out of it to what's left. And what's left is this sticky white powder that and here's an example. I've heard this true. We'll have to try it out. If you know of a segment somewhere, video segment showing this or proving this, what I've heard, that would save me having to figure it out. But here's what I've heard. You take a string of ants. The ants are going along and they follow the pheromone trails from the other ants. And if you scrape that, they all of a sudden go, where's the pheromones? I can't smell it. What do I do? And eventually they work around, oh, here's some of the other ants. There's some pheromones. And they continue their little route around that obstruction or disruption of their trail. And I've heard that if you take some white pasty flour, and you know what? They call it enriched flour. Is that a true statement, or is that a marketing ploy to deceive you? That is a marketing ploy to deceive you. It is actually, they took everything out, including the brand. Oh, we'll take the brand out. We'll feed it to the animals. We'll take this out and we'll feed it to some more animals. And then what's left, we can't feed it to the animals. There's no nutritional value left in it. Well, what do we do with this white powder that's left? Oh, I know. Wow, we'll put some vitamins in it. We'll call it enriched and we'll sell it to humans. And that's what they do. That's what that white, crappy flour is. They take all the good stuff out. And that's what's left is this crappy white powder. If you take some of that white flour and you sprinkle it along that line where the ants go, that the ants will stop and they'll like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? How do we get around this? And then eventually they'll find their way around this and then they'll continue on. But I've heard that if you take freshly ground wheat flour, whole wheat flour, whole grain, it has everything. It has the bran, the germ, and everything, the oil, everything. It's all in it. And you spread that across the line where the ants are traveling back and forth. I've heard not only will they not stop and wonder where to go, but a bunch of the ants on both sides will come back and like, whoo, feast! And they all come back and they're all starting to grab this wheat, chunks of this wheat and the wheat flour and picking it up and eating some of it and then carrying some back to the nest. It's like, okay, we got this is not famine mode, it's feast and we got it easy. This is a bumper crop of fresh stuff just delivered from heaven above, just fell out of the sky. Now, I've heard that. Now, if you know or you've heard that too, if you know of a link to a study or demonstration or a video, I would love to see that. And we will find that, see if we can put a link to it or discuss it or talk to the person who did the study. But it makes sense. The whole grains, the whole goodness of it. We want you to be able to take advantage of that. But the problem is, if you aren't prepping your body at the same time as you have prepped for food to be able to live after an event which might knock out the grid, and you have to live off what you stored, you got to know that your body can handle it. See if there's any other thing that they said. Did they finish it up?
Templeton asks, first gun for a newbie?
It's not good for you internally.
Yep, we pretty much wrapped that up. I want to thank these guys for doing their thing. I'll put a link to what their video was, and you can watch it if you want. But there's a lot more to it all than we realize. And I'm hoping to share those things with you once you see them and know them, and you can start preparing for them now before it gets crazy and you're ready for it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, anyone who puts out great preparedness or bushcrafting or wilderness survival or emergency preparedness, civil defense type of information. That's my jam, and I hope to share it a lot with you. Anyhow, until next time, peace out.